that a nation has a right to define and defend its borders.
Hello everyone, I'm Joseph Dinesh, a Catholic commentator from Sydney, Australia. In this video, I want to talk about the controversial remarks made by the Right Reverend Mariann, an Episcopal bishop, during an inaugural prayer service at the Washington National Cathedral attended by President Trump. In her speech, Bishop Mariann urged the administration and the president to adopt a more compassionate and merciful stance toward undocumented immigrants in the United States. She highlighted that many of these individuals are hardworking, often taking on manual labor and jobs that Americans don't want to do. She also pointed out that despite lacking proper documentation, they are not criminals and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect owed to every person as a child of God. Let's take a moment to listen to her remarks.
I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. The people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals.
Now, this brings me to why I wanted to address her statements. Immigration is such a divisive issue, even among Catholics in America. On one side, you have those on the far right arguing that no immigrants should be allowed, insisting that America is for Americans. On the other side, some on the far left push for completely open borders, claiming that everyone fleeing hardship should be allowed unrestricted entry. But Catholic social teaching, however, offers a more thoughtful and balanced perspective. It avoids these extremes by emphasizing two key principles. First, every nation has the right to define and defend its borders. Second, nations also have a moral responsibility to show compassion and assist those fleeing war, persecution, or extreme poverty. With that as the foundation, let's listen to Bishop Maran as he explains the first principle in greater detail.
This is a morally relevant observation, that a nation has a right to define and defend its borders. There are times, I think, and even in our rhetoric in the church, we can give the impression that, open borders is the only right way to do it.
Right.
What would Jesus do? Well, he'd welcome the stranger, therefore no restrictions. Well, see, that's morally irresponsible for all kinds of reasons. Morally irresponsible in regard to people within a nation state, and yes, in regard to immigrants seeking access. And that'd be another show to go into all the details of why. But it's morally relevant for economic, social, political, cultural reasons for a nation to be able to monitor and maintain its borders. The comparison is often, made with a wall and a door. At night, I close the door of my house and I lock it. I'm very happy to open that door to all kinds of people that want to come in, but, on my terms and with the proper negotiation and so on. Well, I know it's maybe a hackneyed analogy, but there's something right there where a nation has a right to maintain a boundary, but it has a door in it, and it opens that door when it's appropriate. We're a nation of immigrants. All that's true,
Now, to better understand this principle, here is an analogy that makes the concept clear. Imagine a ship sailing across the open sea. The captain's top priority is keeping everyone on board safe. To do that, he has to set clear limits on who can come aboard. Picture the ship coming across people stranded in the water. The captain wants to help, but they can't just let everyone on without thinking about the ship's capacity and resources. If they did, it could put everyone at risk. So the captain makes these decisions not out of cruelty, but because it's necessary to keep everyone safe. We see the same principle in the story of Noah's Ark. God instructed Noah to build an ark with specific dimensions and gave clear instructions about who and what could be brought on board. Noah adhered to these boundaries, bringing only his family and the animals specified by God. By doing so, Noah ensured the ark's purpose, preserving life, and that was fulfilled. The borders of the ark were defined and defended according to a greater plan. Similarly, nations have the right to establish and enforce their borders. This is not an act of exclusion or hostility, but the necessary step to maintain order, security, and the well-being of the citizens within those borders. Now, in the next clip, Bishop Maran explains the second principle, which focuses on how prosperous nations like the United States have a moral responsibility to help people fleeing war, poverty, and political instability. Let's listen.
The other is this attitude of generosity, especially to those who are suffering from persecution or in grave danger. You know, think here, Pope Francis, I found this very interesting. In our Catholic moral tradition, if someone's trying to break into my house at night, you know, to rob something, well, of course I'm against that. And I'm going to lock the door against them and call the police. Suppose someone is in desperate danger. They're being pursued by an assailant. They're in desperate danger and they're knocking at my door to give them shelter. Well, it'd be morally irresponsible of me to say, no, you're not getting in here.
Right.
So there's that moral nuance. Are there people indeed, you know, in the world who are fleeing desperately terrible situations and are seeking, you know, asylum in a country like ours? Sure, there are. And I think you've got to look at that on a case-by-case basis. And now, the minute we make that move, we're getting into the weeds. And I know you can't adjudicate it in a facile way. And I think that happens a lot on both sides. Whether it's a kind of xenophobic, you know, get the foreigners out of here, or it's a kind of open borders, you know, wouldn't Jesus welcome every single stranger? The right answer is in between there someplace. And Catholic social teaching honors both those principles I was talking about.
Yeah, the foundational principles appear clear.
Now, let me explain this with an analogy. Imagine a prestigious institution with strict admission requirements to keep things fair and maintain quality. Now, think about a student from a war-torn country applying for admission. They don't have the usual documentation because of the chaos they have lived through, but they are desperate for a chance to rebuild their life. In this case, the university might waive some requirements and give them a fresh start. In the same way, nations have rules to maintain order, but when people are fleeing war, persecution, and extreme poverty, there is a moral responsibility to respond with mercy and compassion. This same principle of extending compassion is reflected in the Bible. Consider the story of Ruth in the Old Testament. Ruth, a Moabite widow, was an outsider to Israel, a nation that often viewed Moabites with suspicion and hostility. Despite this, Ruth's unwavering loyalty to her mother-in-law Naomi and her genuine need for a new beginning led her to being welcomed into the Israelite community. This act of inclusion demonstrates the importance of responding with compassion to those in extraordinary circumstances. So in a similar way, nations are called to consider the exceptional conditions faced by refugees and respond with humanity and care. Providing aid in these situations is not a gesture of kindness, it's a moral duty. In conclusion, balancing both of these principles is a challenge that many politicians grapple with. More often than not, they tend to align themselves with one extreme or the other, as we see in America today. Finally, I would like to wrap up with a quote from Pope John Paul II. He said, "Illegal immigration should be prevented, but it is also essential to combat vigorously the criminal activities which exploit undocumented immigrants. At the same time, the right of sovereign nations to control their borders must be respected, always guaranteeing the proper treatment and dignity of all persons." I hope this video was helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. God bless you.